the best of Money Matters. The Big Story.
Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Hongbin Jeong. In a shocking reversal, U.S. President Donald Trump announced a surprise 90-day pause on tariff hikes for most countries overnight, causing a surge in global markets. Now, this move comes after a period of heightened trade tensions, particularly with China, and has raised questions about the future direction of U.S. trade policies. But while some see it as a step towards stabilizing the global economy, others are concerned about the long-term implications of continued tariff uncertainty. So what does this decision mean for the global trade environment, and could this decision signal a shift away from a possible recession? Well, to find out more, joining us today to share more is Antonio Fatás, who is a professor of economics at INSEAD. Professor, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon.
All right, Professor. Trump announced a sudden 90-day pause on tariffs for most countries. Did this come as a surprise for you?
I mean, a little bit, yes. I thought it was going to take a little bit longer to make a change in the policy. Again, at the same time, I think that policy that they had started with, those high tariffs, were not sustainable. They were too high for many countries. They were going to cause a lot of economic trouble, and it was very hard to imagine that they would be around for long. But it was a little bit too quick, because I think it took 24 hours for a reversal in the decision.
Right. I mean, for weeks, U.S. President Donald Trump has plowed ahead with plans to impose steep new tariffs on imports, despite warnings that the policy could trigger economic chaos. And as you mentioned, the announcement of his pause came only 13 hours after the duties had gone into effect. What do you think his reasoning was for this sudden pause? Why now?
I mean, I don't think it's very hard to find the logic here, because the tariffs did not make much sense to start with. Given his objectives, the tariffs were not going to achieve those objectives. So it almost feels like this is just a little bit of revenge, a little bit of show of power. And at some point now it's becoming this, again, a show of power of negotiation, right? So now I'm going to give you 90 days to negotiate and give me what I want. What I want is not clear, but it's another, again, example where he really enjoys that notion that he's in control, that he can ask for things from countries. And if you take it like this, from a more personal point of view, this makes a lot of sense. If you look at the economy, if you look at the country, it is not obvious this is helping anyone.
Well, that's some interesting take there. Well, Professor Trump mentioned that he was closely monitoring U.S. bond market yields, which were rising due to market turmoil before deciding to pause tariff hikes. Do you think the bond market played a crucial role in influencing him to adopt this 90-day pause as well?
I think it was, in general, the market, not just the bond market, also the stock market. I think there was enough volatility, there was enough reaction that clearly signaled that most people thought those tariffs were too high and too damaging. And maybe he was going to wait a little bit longer to do something similar to what he did in just 13 hours. But I think he felt the pressure that if he didn't do anything, financial markets might go too wild, might cause effects which will be immediate, that one doesn't need to wait for the effects. It would have been a chaotic situation for financial markets, maybe if he hadn't announced a reversal of the policy.
Well, Professor, do you think this could also signal that he may be rethinking his tariffs? I mean, is there a possibility now that he may even just scrap the whole tariffs altogether?
I mean, I think what he's going to do now, if there is some consistency, is he's going to start negotiating. He's going to start claiming victories right and left, even if I'm not sure many people are going to do lots of concessions. I'm not sure whether he's going to do 90 countries or 180 countries at a time. Maybe he's going to focus on a few and try to make a point that he's negotiating very hard with the others. So I don't think the conversation is going to go away. I don't think we're going to stop talking about tariffs. But I expect a number of countries over time claiming that they have achieved some sort of agreement and tariffs are off the table, at least for the near future.
Okay, well then if he proceeds though, what happens when Trump's pause ends?
I think a few countries might still get some tariffs here and there. I mean, look what is happening to China today. He's not averse to the idea that some countries have tariffs while others don't. So it could be that in those negotiations there are conflicts. I expect those conflicts to be larger with the bigger countries, because the bigger countries like China might say to him, I'm sorry, I'm not willing to go there. So if you keep the tariffs, I'll retaliate. And that might happen with other countries, maybe with Europe, maybe with other large economies like India. Or maybe not. Maybe those other countries end up finding a way to please him without many concessions, but enough for Trump to say, okay, I found an agreement, let's drop the tariffs.
Well, I mean, you did mention that during these 90 days, some countries will try to negotiate with Trump to bring their tariffs percentage lower. Well, do you think this gives the nations more time to plan before the tariffs take effect again after those 90 days?
I'm not sure there's much to plan. I think it is for companies, if all the tariffs were in place, it is for companies to react to those tariffs, think about where should they produce, where they should be located. I'm not sure countries can do a lot more than protecting the sectors that will be damaged by those tariffs, helping them in case they cause economic trouble. But I think at this point, the focus is going to be in, okay, what is it that we need to do to say to the U.S. so the tariffs are not in place?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, Trump has put a pause on most nations, but for China, he did the complete opposite. Instead, he further ramped up pressure on China. Trump has said that he would raise the tariff on Chinese imports to 125% from the 104% level that took effect at midnight. Do you think China is the main target of Trump's tariffs?
I think it's a little bit a combination of two things. China is the other economic superpower. So it happened already in the first term. It's happening again now. It makes sense that Trump focus on China. Why not? At the same time, it's a little bit of an accident. China did come up as being a lot more responsive in terms of retaliation. And Trump does not like that. He needs to make sure that he saves face in front of his voters. So it's clear that he wanted to show at least some strength against China. I'm not sure this is sustainable. These tariffs are very high and they're going to hurt the U.S. economy. So I expect some sort of reversal as well. It might take more time, but I don't think the numbers that we're hearing, which are 130%, are numbers that one could see for a long period of time.
Well, with China's tariffs still going into effect and given China's influence on regional markets here, Professor, how will such hefty tariffs impact regional economies?
I think from a regional point of view, if these tariffs stay the way they are today, I think China has a really large incentive to try to export to the U.S. through some of the other economies in the region. As long as I can sell Chinese products to Vietnam and export to the U.S. from Vietnam, the tariffs will be zero. I think we're going to see a lot of that gaming. Companies will try to do that. It is very hard sometimes for the U.S. to check where the origin of goods are coming from. In particular, given how fast the decision has been made, there's no infrastructure to check on whether these goods are truly coming from Vietnam or China or somewhere else. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. So that's going to affect maybe some of the movements of goods across the region. Otherwise, the rest of the countries, I think they're going to focus on that negotiation. So maybe there's a way to put tariffs in the background and not talk about them at least for a few months, hopefully years.
Well, at the end of the day, in the overall picture here, markets have rallied after Trump's tariff and pause announcement. In fact, economists have also rescinded their forecast for a U.S. recession. Do you still see recession risks on the horizon, though, especially given the ongoing uncertainties on global trade?
I think that the risks are there. I think that the big difference is, again, 24 hours ago, I was almost sure there was going to be a global recession, and maybe a deep one, because those tariffs were so damaging. I couldn't see any other scenario. Today I see more scenarios ahead of me. One of them still remains a recession because the uncertainty that has been created, the tariffs are still in place. If you calculate the average tariff that the U.S. is imposing on its imports, it hasn't changed that much because it has gone down on many countries, but it went up in China. And China is a big exporter to the U.S. So we still have tariffs in place. Let's not forget about it. I feel the market yesterday was a little bit too optimistic. Let's see what happens today. I think there's still lots of risk ahead, and I would not rule out the possibility of a recession.
Well, Professor, I also want to take a step back here because less than 4 hours before announcing a pause on reciprocal tariffs, Trump posted on Truth Social claiming that it was a prime time to buy stocks. Now, critics are calling Trump's move as an attempt at market manipulation. What's your take on this? Is Trump capable of something like that? Is the timing, politically motivated? Does it serve a strategic economic purpose?
I mean, I would say my biggest issue with that is something that looks like more insider trading. I mean, he gave a hint because he was going to make a decision.
Right.
He knew what the decision was, and he sent a signal to certain people who looked at the message. But who knows who else got that signal? I assume he talked to some other people before he made that decision. The question is how many people took advantage of that information to move before the market moved. And obviously, if they did that, their profits would have been amazing. So I just find it very difficult to understand how the U.S. president can, in some sense, pre-announce a policy decision to the market without announcing the decision. And some people might have moved on that tweet, on that post on Truth Social. So yes, I think it is a very odd thing to happen, and this is not normal when you think about a country like the U.S.
Well, if that's the case, and if this is really so-called insider trading, shouldn't the SEC respond to a scenario like this, especially when a high-ranking official is making statements that can influence financial markets?
A different time, probably not today, because the SEC is obviously running under someone who's been nominated by Trump. And what we're seeing today is that the rest of the government is going to follow whatever Trump says. And I doubt there's any agency in the U.S. government today that is acting independently, with the exception of the central bank.
Well, on top of this, Professor, the world's wealthiest people added $304 billion to their combined net worth yesterday. And this is the largest one-day gain in history of the Bloomberg Billionaires Index after the announcement. I believe, after his Liberation Day announcement on all the list of tariffs, billionaires had lost a lot of their net worth. Now, the largest individual gainer was Tesla CEO Elon Musk, who added $36 billion to his fortune, followed by Meta Platforms Mark Zuckerberg, who gained almost $26 billion. Now, does this record-setting, wealth gain indicate that there was some sort of potential coordination or foreknowledge among key market players?
I don't think these people, Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, were coordinating with this, but for sure, some of them, in particular Elon Musk, were telling Trump to take a decision on removing the tariffs, because otherwise their wealth, the stock market, their company's values would stay low for a long period of time. So I do think you see the influence of billionaires or people that are rich in the U.S. trying to make sure that Trump doesn't go much against their wealth.
Right. Well, what implications then does this have for the average investor in terms of affecting long-term investor confidence and market stability?
I mean, I think it is very hard for an average investor. First, you see that you might not get the information on time while other people do, which is very tricky. Second, you see an incredible amount of volatility. So I wouldn't be surprised if an average investor tries to stay out of this, tries to say, look, this stock market is not for me. Maybe it's going to go up, but maybe it will go down, and it's going to be so volatile with the timing from one day to the next that I don't want to have my savings there. So I would expect some investors to stay in a very conservative fashion, not investing a lot of their wealth in the stock market.
Some great analysis there, Professor. But before we let you go here, what else will you be looking out for in the coming days? I mean, crystal balling here, but anything Trump might do that might swing markets once again?
I think we're going to see statements that are going to move the market for sure in one direction or another. We'll see statements that will be very negative, some that will be positive. Unfortunately, I think we're going to go through weeks, months, and maybe the next 3 years where we're going to have to analyze these statements every day, every week, and this is our life for the next 3+ years, I think.
Thank you so much, Professor, for joining me today with your time and your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was Antonio Fatás, who is the professor of economics at INSEAD. Now, this has been The Big Story with me, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.